It's been 2 years since I created the original risk matrix video, and since then I've learned a couple of things. In this video I'm going to solve two big issues that I had with my original version of the risk matrix: performance and the background image. So stick around if you want to learn how to create a DAX risk matrix, and hit that like button if you think this video was helpful, and of course consider subscribing because that helps the channel a lot. So welcome back, and let's have a look at the previous version of the risk matrix. So this was the original version of the risk matrix, where we have an image and we have cards. And this did the trick, but it took a long time to create because we needed to create separate columns. We needed to have some code structure for every cell that we wanted to have. So this was cell 101. And then we added cards for each of those cells. And each card would have their own grid. And that's portrayed here. So chief issues that I have with this is that it takes a long time creating this risk matrix. And if you have a even broader risk matrix with 5 by 5 sets, well, chances are that you will be working hours and hours to get that all into the data set. But other than the original creation of this risk matrix, there's also the issue with the alignment. And in one of the previous videos, I mentioned that in the new version of Power BI, you're able to group values. So you can say, okay, well, these values now are grouped. And that initially solved my issue, but it might not be suitable for everyone. So what if you wanted to have that risk matrix as being one entity, one visual? Well, a number of things happen, and a chief one is that it speeds up the solution a whole lot. Now, in recent versions of Power BI, you have the option to view the performance analyzer. And this is a nice little feature that I've seen popping up in multiple videos and wanted to try that out on my risk matrix. This is the original, and on the next page I actually have the new version that we're going to build today. So looking at this page and looking at the original, we will see that performance on this page is a lot slower than it is on this page. So let's click on the performance analyzer. Let's click on start recording, and I'm going to click on refresh visuals. And what we'll see is that, well, you saw that it took time, and each card needs to be generated. And because Power BI is sequential, it will wait until the former entity or the former visual actually shows up. So each of these visuals needs to be loaded separately, and it takes time. And sometimes you don't have time, and other times you're just looking for a visual that loads directly. So let's stop this one and let's have a look. Some of these visuals take actually a second, because this is milliseconds, right? So it takes seconds for cards to load. Well, cards are just these simple one item visuals, so we want to have this faster. So let's jump into the risk matrix 3 by 3, and that's this one, and let's clear the values. Well, I'm not going to clear the values. I'm just going to click on start recording, and I'm going to refresh this page, and it's done. Did you see that? It is way faster than the previous one. Let's do that again. So this is one major upside of the new risk matrix that I'm going to share with you how to create. And just for the fun of it, let's also see how that happens with a 5 by 5 grid, because that's bigger. And in the previous version, you would load roughly, well, what's that? 5 by 5, 10, 25 cards right? 25 cards. They all would need to be loaded. So that would take roughly 4 or 5 seconds. So let's click on record and let's refresh that visual. Boom. And we're done. It is just that fast. So lovely, right? Let's dive into how this is created, because there's a number of changes that I've done to the original risk matrix. Actually, there's not much left of the original. This version uses DAX formulas. And as you can see, I've divided them up into different sets of values here. We have a generic DAX formula table, which you create by navigating to enter data, and you just hide the original value. So let's view the hidden values here. And here you see that I have an original column, and I hide that, and Power BI automatically picks that up as being a DAX table, only DAX, and that helps it. That helps visualize it in a better way, so that you know that these are the DAX formulas that you actually want to use. So what I've done is I have 3 DAX tables, one for the 3x3, one for the 5x5, one generic. I have 2 fake tables, which uses the probability column, and I made 2 or 4, actually 4 columns of the impact severity and the probability severity. Let's start with that generic DAX formula, because that is actually the start of the whole track. So what I've done is I created this DAX query for all risks. So here is that formula for you, where it calculates the distinct count of non-blank values of the risk ID. And calculate, I'll do a separate video about calculate, because it is a awesome formula if you're working with DAX or if you're working with Power BI as a whole. So this actually counts all of the risks that are non-blanks. That is very good. And then we obviously have the active risk count. And these are both generic DAX formulas that I'm going to use in the rest of the video. So let's have a close look. This actually counts all the risks, which is based on the risk count DAX formula actually, and then looks at the risk status is 1 active. So it only counts the risks that are active, which is very nice. So this is the basic generic structure of all of those DAX formulas. We're going to use the active risk count in all the next sections. So with the risks defined, let's set up the probability and impact scores correctly, because these will be used later on. So we're going to have a look at how I created this table first. So this is a 3x3 grid, and in the risk matrix we need to have a certain understanding on what actually is low, medium and high, and what is low, medium and high in the impact. So for instance, we have a probability and we have an impact of percentages with probability, and an impact actually calculates from 0 to 10. So what is high, what is medium, what is low? We need to tell Power BI which values to put in there. So looking at risk, I create a new column, and that column will look like this, where for the impact severity, what I'm doing is I'm looking into 3 levels. This switch true function will generate a low, medium or high output related to the impact severity. So all risks lower than 4 will actually be calculated as low. So there's a low risk, there's a medium risk, and there is a high risk. And we're going to use that impact in further calculations that we're going to do in the DAX formulas. Now, apart from the impact, we also want to have the probability severity here. And here we need to have a look at the percentages, and in the backend, in the OData feed, that percentage is actually calculated as a decimal value. So again, here it is low, medium, and high. And I'm using that switch is true. So on the true value, it will generate the low or the medium or the high value. Now with that, I know each and every risk. For each of the risks, I now know the impact severity and the probability severity. And as you can see, I already created the 5 levels here as well. And the only thing that's changed here is the amount of severity values that I have in my switch. I've added more granularity here. So for the impact severity, it's now looking at lower than 3, lower than 5, lower than 7, lower than 9, and otherwise it would be very high. For the probability, I've done the same thing. I've looked at different percentages for the unlikely, low, medium, high, extreme. So with that, now Power BI knows if a project, if a risk is low, medium, or high, as well as if the impact is low, medium, and high. But we need to now create a dummy for the probability table, because what we're going to do is we're going to create a matrix, and I'll do that right here. And this matrix will look at the columns for the probability. And why I need to do that is because not always will you have a high probability. Such as in this case where there's no high value here. So if I took the values directly from the probability and I took the impact severity directly, what you will see is that not all data is in here. And we can't use that conditional formatting that we're going to dive into later. So to make sure that we have all the probability severity levels in our risk matrix, what we're going to do is I created a fake column. And what I've done, and I'm going to open that up here, is I created a new blank query, or I entered data, actually. I entered data, and that source file looks like this, where there's all the different probabilities as well as an order ID. And the order ID is very important because I'm using that 2 times. One is to create the actual level of the order in which these values need to show up. And the other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to use that order ID to actually generate the conditional formatting. Looking at the probability level 5, it looks like this. So again, how do you create that? You go to enter data, and the first one is going to be probability. And the second one is going to be order ID. And then example, value 1, value 2, value 3, and then you have the order IDs, and here you are generating your new table. Just like that, very simple, very easy to do, and automatically Power BI will trigger a number value here because only number values are in here. So that's very good. Let's close and apply, and let's make sure that the probability columns that we created actually align with the actual risks. So to do that, we need to go to the model, and just for viewing purposes, I've created a risk matrix table here, and you can do that yourself as well. So we're creating a new layout. I'm doing this as an example, then you drag and drop the different tables that we're going to look into, and that is going to be the level 3 probability and the level 5 probability, and have a look at the different values that we're going to use here. So for the level 3 severity, I'm actually looking at the new DAX column that we created called probability severity level 3, as well as in the probability severity level 5, I'm actually looking at the probability of the 5 levels. Now, one other thing that we need to do is we need to make sure that the probability actually is sorted by the order ID. I already have that in here. So make sure that you do that as well, where you set the probability being sorted by the order ID in the same table. So let's generate a level 5 risk matrix next to this one, because we already have level 3 here, right? So opening up the level 5 probability column, adding the probability, you see here that it opens up extreme, high, medium, low, unlikely, not alphabetically, but in the order of the order ID, and that is very useful. Next, what we need to do is we need to populate the impact. And how do we do that? Well, we create another set of DAX formulas. Now I've put them in here on the DAX 5x5 table, because there is a number of DAX queries that we're going to use here. And they're all quite similar, so let's have a look. We have the high, low, medium, very high, and very low impact active risks. What we're going to look at is we're going to look at if a active risk count, so that is the one in the generic that we mentioned at the beginning of this video, has a risk impact severity level, which is the one that we have created in the tables of the risk, has a level 5 as being high. So a high impact active risk is calculated based on an active risk that has a severity level as being high. Now, if that's blank, it's going to show up as 0. And why do you want to have that? Because we actually want to see the zeros as well. And then if it is not blank, it's not going to show up as 0. It's just going to calculate the active risks that actually have a high severity. A high severity impact. As we create these, make sure that you calculate that based on that table or based on that column that we created earlier. So the impact severity level 5, which is in the risk table, is actually going to look at the values that we've set earlier. So high, low, medium, very high, and very low. And now we can start populating the tables here. So let's do that right now, where we have a table with the probability, and now we're going to add the very low, low, medium, high, and very high values. And there you go. This is starting to look like a risk matrix, right? Now what we need to do is, obviously, we need to lower the values here. So let's lower the actual titles here. Let me do that right now, speeding this up. And basically, we now have our risk matrix, right? But it doesn't have a total in the original, right? So let's remove that total, making it look a bit more like a matrix. And we're missing the values of, we're missing the color of the risk matrix. And that is actually done by adding the conditional formatting. Here again comes the order ID that we already have in our probability columns. So let's do that right now, where I'm going to go to the field formatting, no, to the conditional formatting. I'll start with the very low, and I'll say background color, and we're going to turn that on, and we're not going to base that on the values that there are in the system. Nope, we're going to base that on rules, and those rules are going to be based on the order ID. And it's not going to be count, it's actually going to be sum. And we're going to add 5 levels because we have 5 different severities, right? Extreme, high, medium, low, and unlikely. So everything looks at the is value because we have a hard number that we're going to use there. Make sure that you use number here. And then we're going to see how that risk matrix actually needs to look. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for the different layers of the conditional formatting here. And the lowest 3 are actually going to be green. And the top 2 are actually going to be amber. And there we go. So I'm going to speed up creating the risk conditional formatting for the rest, but stick around. I'll be back in a few seconds. So in the last one, be sure that you set this to sum and this one to rules, because that is something that I have struggled with previously. So let's do that last one together again, where the values need to be linked up to the actual values that we have in the order ID. And in that way, we set the numbers, and then it's all going to be red until the last one is going to be amber. And there we go. We have our risk matrix. Now, a number of things that I can do here is I'm going to edit the field formatting. For very low, I'm going to set this to align in the center, which makes it a bit more pretty. I'm going to do that for the other ones as well. Low is going to go to the center. Medium is going to go to the center. High is going to go to the center. And then very high is also centered. It looks small, and you can change that by actually going into the values and then increasing the size of those values here, making a bit more space here. And we can do that to the table headers or the column headers as well. This is 15, so let's set the column headers as being the same text size, 15, and now it makes a lot more sense. So a number of things that I like about this risk matrix is that it is wicked fast. Let's have a look at both the 5x5 grid and the 3x3 grid on the same page, and let's see the performance again, because I really like this. Boom, and it's loaded. Now in the original risk matrix, that would take you 3 to 4 seconds, maybe more. So that's a huge improvement, as well as the alignment of the values and the color. So it's always aligned. No need to group values anymore. No need to have that added complexity. Another thing that I really like is that you can increase the size of your risk matrix based on just a couple of simple calculations here. Make sure that you have that risk impact severity and that risk probability severity set up so that it looks always so that it always looks at that severity level here. So if you want to grab this example file with the DAX formulas in there as well, that is available to you if you subscribe to the newsletter. There is a link below. And I've created a playlist with all of my risk matrix videos in there. It's on screen now, but if you are more of an explorer of Gantt chart visuals in Power BI, that can also be done. And as always, consider subscribing and clicking on that like button if the video helped you out. And of course, get notified by a next video, which I hope is coming soon. Thanks for watching and see you next time.